the Fantasy Football Fanalist Podcast, presented by Fantasy Data. Here's your hosts, Billy Muzio and Bradley Stalder.
Welcome back, everybody. Billy and Bradley here for the Fantasy Football Fanalist, presented to you by Fantasy Data. And tonight, we're going to be doing some ADP talk. We're going to be going through the Fantasy Data ADP. We're going to be comparing it versus the FFPC ADP, and as well as the Sleeper ADP. And we're going to be talking about some positions that we like, that we don't like, players in those positions, I should say, buys, sells, who we're targeting, and so forth. So, Bradley, let's have at it, buddy.
Billy, what's special about tonight? It's been a long time since it's just been us. So I thought, it's just the two of us, Billy, for the first time in a while. This is a special moment. Brings back times when we were live during the season and not live during the season, and sending out the podcast and just back and forth. And this one's going to get hotly debated, I think. We've got some wide-ranging players and some very strong opinions.
Yeah, and for those of you who aren't familiar with Bradley and I's rankings, we're normally on par with a lot of the same rankings, with a lot of the same players. This year, I think, is the first year that we've seen some big variations in our rankings, which is great for debate, great for discussion, and it's also a nice talking point. It creates a lot of beer bets on the side. That will be settled in August, by the way, for last year. And we're going to have probably several more being made over the course between now and August until the Fantasy Football Expo. So let's rock and roll and let's get started on these ADPs.
Absolutely. Let's kick it off with a player that you are way above on ADP, and we'll start with quarterback. So what is a quarterback, Billy, that you are really above ADP on, you are high on, that you are telling our listeners go out and draft him with confidence above where he is currently being drafted?
Okay, I have to say most of my ADP here on the quarterback is pretty chalk. I think that you have one player that really stands out, but if I had to pick a name here, it's probably Hurst. He's going on Sleeper ADP. He's going as the 11th overall quarterback for 2021. Fantasy Data has him as the 11th quarterback as well for 2021. And then FFPC has him at 8. I have him at 9. So I'm in between kind of all of the ADPs there. But most of mine are chalk. I mean, Mahomes at 1. I have Kyler Murray at 2. Josh Allen at 3, and then the list kind of progresses down from there, as you would expect. The only one who really jumps out, I think, on that list for me is Jalen Hurts and the upside he has with his rushing.
Yeah, I think that Jalen Hurts is going to be a Konami code quarterback, a very safe quarterback too. I agree, Billy. He's a very high upside. There are some concerns about his completion percentage and whether getting Devonta Smith is going to make the impact that we need him to make as a passer right away. And whether Jalen Reagor makes the jump, whether Dallas Goedert is going to be a level up from what production he has. Hopefully Ertz gets traded for that to happen, but we don't know at this point in the offseason.
So I see somebody on here, Bradley. Why don't you tell me who you have on your ADP that is, I should say, sticking out like a sore thumb for most people. I actually like it, but it's bold. But let's let the people hear your take.
Which one? I've got a few of them.
Your number one.
My number one overall. Yes. So this player is the ADP 6th quarterback. For Sleeper, the 7th quarterback for Fantasy Data, and the 6th for the FFPC. But he is my number one overall quarterback. You need to draft Justin Herbert with confidence. He is my number one quarterback. I think they've got enough weapons there. Keenan Allen is there. They've got, of course, big Mike Williams. Jared Cook is a touchdown machine. Austin Eckler is healthy. He's a weapon out of the backfield. And they've got a very improved offensive line, moving from one of the worst to improving at all of these positions. So draft Justin Herbert with confidence. He was a great rookie, set all kinds of quarterback rookie records for passing yardage and passing touchdowns. And now, I know the defense is a little bit better, but I think that's just going to improve his efficiency. And in a division where you're going to be facing Mahomes and you're going to be facing a lot of other, offenses, you're going to have to throw regardless of how good your defense is. So fire up your Justin Herbert, draft him with confidence. Will he finish number one? I have Mahomes at number 2, and it's really close projected points wise. But I think that if you want upside and you're willing to wait for the 6th quarterback to get number 1 overall production, I think that's within the range of outcomes for Justin Herbert.
So I'm tweeting right now. I'm letting all of our listeners know that we're live now, and Bradley Stalder is already spitting out hot takes on our ADP live show. And it's a lot of people are going to disagree, Bradley, that you have Justin Herbert over here as number 1 quarterback for 2021.
Over Mahomes, over Allen, over Kyler Murray, over Lamar Jackson, over Dak Prescott.
And I'm not going to say I dislike it because I like Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert had one hell of a rookie campaign. It was arguably the best rookie campaign we have ever seen from any rookie quarterback, period. He broke every single rookie record with the exception of the passing yards from 2012 from Andrew Luck. So I like it. They upgraded the offensive line as well as the weapons that you had just stated. So I think that there is a good chance that he could finish as number 1. I'm not as bullish. I mean, I have him here as number 6, which is in line with all the ADPs. I could see him going in mine maybe up to 5 or 4 around there, but I do like the hot take, Bradley. I like it.
Well, they, just to throw a couple things out there as well, they brought in Joe Lombardi as their offensive coordinator, who worked very closely with Drew Brees for many years. And then, of course, when he wasn't working with Drew Brees, he was working with Matthew Stafford in Detroit, where they sustained Calvin Johnson and Golden Tate as both 1,000-yard receivers. They also drafted Josh Palmer as an upgrade over like Tyron Johnson and Jalen Guyton. So I see a lot of positives for Herbert. He's 6'6", built, strongly built, and that's why he's a goal line option. I projected him for 5-6 rushing touchdowns in a 17-game season. So, I mean, they're not going to use Eckler between the tackles at the goal line. They've got Justin Jackson. Kalen Ballage has moved on. Who was the rookie last year that
Josh Kelly?
Yeah, Josh Kelly did nothing. He was plotting at 2 yards a carry. So Justin Herbert is a viable goal line option for the Chargers. Fire him up. He's going as the 6th. Be confident drafting him at 6.
So there's a few things. I love that Sleeper released their ADP that they had here. I had been discussions with them about trying to get their ADPs, and then within a week they was delivered on Twitter. So hats off to Sleeper. Thank you for tackling that and sending it out to us podcasters and shows for talking material. So I think that's great. And FFPC was able to get us their ADPs as well. And a couple things I'd like to do here is I'm looking through the list here, and I'm taking a look at FFPC ADP. I'm taking a look at Sleeper ADP, and I'm comparing it to Fantasy Data ADP. Is there anything on here to you that really stands out, like sore thumb, like, wow, that's a major contrast?
Well, I'm looking here, Sleeper, FFPC versus Fantasy Data. Trevor Lawrence needs to be upgraded. I think that's a pretty obvious one. Fantasy Data has him at 22nd. And I have him at 16, but Sleeper has him at 10 and FFPC has him as 13. I think we do have to temper expectations a little bit for Trevor Lawrence. I know he's going to be throwing, but rookie quarterbacks with a new head coach, it takes a while to learn the offense, especially like a head coach who's been out of football, much less never coached in the NFL, and Urban Meyer. So I think that there's going to be some growing pains, at least in the start, and a mid quarterback too is, I think, where I'm comfortable having Trevor Lawrence, but not as my number 1 quarterback in a 12-team league.
So question here, because you input this ADP for us here, is this Sleeper ADP, was it redraft or dynasty? Because I know a lot of people
redraft.
So that is redraft. Okay, that's high, I think. 10 is pretty high. I agree that 10's too high. I think he's somewhere in the middle. I think 16 is probably about right. I think your ranking versus these ADPs is probably about accurate with 16. 22nd, I think, is a little low. I think that's getting caught up with drafts that are happening now currently. And you have to think also with FFPC, these are also big tournaments. These are go big or go home. So they're trying to land someone that's going to win them $500,000. So they're taking more chances. They're going kind of against the grain, and they're going for high upside with most of their picks. And let's face it, Trevor Lawrence is one of the best prospects coming out of college that we've seen since Andrew Luck. So I think that that's why we're seeing some of these major variances in ADP depending upon the sites. And which brings a good point here is take advantage of ADP on whatever site you're drafting on. We were doing a draft the other day, and one snuck by me. Like, I think it was Adam Trotman on Sleeper had like an ADP of like 900, and it was ridiculous. And because and that's like overall in terms of all the players, like he should be going along the same lines in drafts as like Cole Kmet, in same drafts as like Fergusor and allowed like that like tier of player, but to just blatantly have him like listed that low on ADP or rank or whatever it was on it was organized on Sleeper to be able to find him. And I just flat out missed it because he was so low. And I was like, oh crap. So take advantage of those type of ADPs on whatever platform you're looking at. And that's what we're doing these. And that's why we're doing these discussions is
Absolutely.
to help you find players like this that are being either undervalued or overvalued in drafts.
Well, Billy, if I could talk about one more quarterback that I'm very high on, and I know you're very high on as well, and that is Baker Mayfield. I have Baker Mayfield as my projected quarterback 12 overall, and he's in Sleeper at 16, Fantasy Data at 24, and FFPC at 22. And I think at like outside of the top 16, he's an absolute steal. We saw what he was doing at the end of the year last year when he was running Stefanski's offense. It was past the monsoon games. And I mean, he had one bad game in that last like 6, but that was because his top 5 wide receivers were out due to COVID restrictions. So I think, he's gotten comfortable. He is a quarterback that doesn't have a high rushing floor, which is why I don't have him in the top 10. But I think that there's a lot of good things happening for this Browns offense. I think Chubb and Hunt and Hooper and Njoku and Bryant. And then we talk about OBJ hopefully coming back and Landry and Higgins, and they have Schwartz that they drafted. There's a lot of really potent offensive players for the Browns, and Baker has the capability of getting the ball to them.
I'm glad that you have Baker ranked this high because I also have Baker ranked this high. And I haven't finalized my rankings, but he's going to fall in between like 11 to 14 range as I wrap those up. But I'm in drafts, and you've seen I've been posting draft boards like every couple days here. And
yeah, you have an addiction here, Billy.
For those listening, I've already completed about 30 plus drafts on the year. And
unreal.
And I'm looking at ADPs here, and there's always a quarterback that is there in like rounds 18. And for me, I'm waiting. I wait on a quarterback, and I wait and I wait and I wait because I truly believe that every year you can find a quarterback who's going to outperform their ADP. Last year, it was Aaron Rodgers going in around 11. It was Josh Allen going in around 11, around 12. And I owned a lot of those two players, and that's quite frankly what carried me to a lot of championships was getting MVP type of caliber players at that ADP. For me, that dark horse is Baker Mayfield. And I think that Baker Mayfield not only has the talent, but now the offense is clicking. They had 1 year under Stefanski. They also have Odell Beckham coming back. And I think it's all just coming together, this beautiful like stew that just kind of just simmered and simmered and simmered. And finally it's ready to eat. And Baker and the Browns are ready to eat. And it's going to happen. Everyone thought that Baker was going to be great when Odell Beckham came over and they were going to blow up, and they weren't the offense they thought they were going to be, but we saw them perform last year and we saw what they were able to do, especially in playoffs. And I think we're going to see that carry over here into 2021.
Well, 2 other points before we move on to a quarterback that you're not too high on, Billy. The Browns offensive line is one of the best in the NFL, and that's going to give Baker time to make all the throws that he needs to make and make good decisions. And the second is that they almost knocked off the Chiefs. Like, we're talking about a Browns team. Mike Clay has his way too early Super Bowl prediction of the Browns versus the Buccaneers. Like, ESPN's Mike Clay has has the Browns going to the Super Bowl this year, and they've got the talent to be there. The defense was really buffed up this year. They've got some injured players coming back. All in on the Browns as a team you should be very high on.
Oh, I'd like that. I put $100 on them to win the division before the draft, and I'm really liking those chances right now.
All right, Billy, tell us about a quarterback that our listeners should stay away from in drafts.
Ah, man. For me, it's a tough one. I want to take the chalk here, and I want to say Deshaun Watson because I still see people drafting him. And I don't think he plays in 2021. And if he does, I could seriously see an 8-10 game suspension. You're going to get him back. What team is he going to be on? What's the offense going to look like? So, I mean, I'm not drafting Deshaun Watson anywhere. I just acquired him in a dynasty league. I think that's different because you can in that roster I have is stacked. I can just kind of sit him and just kind of forget about it and hope for 2022. But I think in redraft purposes, I'm not drafting Deshaun Watson at all this year.
No, steer clear of Deshaun Watson in redraft unless we get a lot of clarity very quickly. And even, I mean, a lot has to happen for us to be confident in Deshaun Watson's future. He needs to resolve his cases, all 30 plus accusations or whatever.
I stopped counting.
He needs to have those closed. And then he needs to figure out his Texan situation because he was already planning to threaten to sit out the season unless he was traded. So I think there's a lot of hoops to jump through. It's extraordinarily high risk. Do not be drafting him almost at all. Anywhere close to his ADP. I'm looking right now at Deshaun Watson going 17th on Sleeper, 9th on Fantasy Data, and 18th on the FFPC. All of those are still too high.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a best ball and you're taking him as like a fourth quarterback or a third quarterback, I think, okay, sure. That's fine. Go for it. Because if he comes back and he does play great, then that's a game changer. And you're not relying on him.
Depend on Deshaun Watson.
Correct. So I think, best ball, okay, take your dart throw. That's fine. But redraft as your quarterback 2, or backing up you're probably in another quarterback 2 because you probably waited. I think that's where you're going to get in trouble. I do want to throw another name in the hat because that was so chalk here. But my second one is Ben Roethlisberger. They have a really tough schedule. This offensive line is starting to look a little worrisome for 2021, and I can really see Ben taking a lot of hits. He's already at that age where he started accumulating injuries. I could really see him taking a big hit, like week 4, week 5, missing a few games, coming back in, maybe Mason Rudolph or Haskins, whoever it is that comes in, maybe performs, and now Big Ben's backing him up. I could see something like that happening. So I'm staying away from Ben Roethlisberger, even though they had the passing volume that they had last year. I just think that the schedule's tough, and I'm not too crazy about the offensive line.
So I'll push back on Ben Roethlisberger. I don't think that he's actually, for me, a value. Right now, I see him going 27th on Sleeper, 17th on Fantasy Data, and 26th in FFPC. Like, he's very low. I have him at 14. And the reason why I have him at 14 is because of all the weapons. He has now Najee Harris, a respectable running back. I know the offensive line isn't that great, but we will see him he got the ball to Deontay Johnson. Juju is still there. They re-signed him. Chase Claypool is a big play waiting to happen. I think there's too many offensive pieces for Roethlisberger to not work unless, as you mentioned, he does get injured. But I'm not going to bank on that. And if he's a quarterback 2 or a quarterback 3, all right, fine. I think that we saw what happened when the Steelers started to make mistakes in the Browns game in the playoffs. They made mistakes early, they got behind, and they had to pass a ton. And Ben Roethlisberger, Juju, Claypool, Deontay, they won people lots of money if you had that stack in daily fantasy, if you remember that. So, Billy, I think I even
you came back on me. I was up by 60 points.
And it was like a fourth quarter, just throwing lots of garbage time. So either the defense holds up and Ben is still going to be pass first because he's the offensive coordinator. I know they got a new offensive coordinator like Matt Canada or whatever. No, Ben Roethlisberger is the offensive coordinator of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I'm higher on him as at least a value. I have him at 14 due to all the passing volume.
I don't think he's going to crack my top 20 once I finalize my rankings. I'm a little, I understand the passing volume. I understand the weapons, but I think that I don't think he plays more than 12 games this year. I really don't.
Interesting. I think this is his last year. And if he can hobble, he's going to play. So we'll see. They may want to see a little bit more of Haskins. They may want to see a little bit more of Rudolph, but even if bad things happen to Roethlisberger, they're going to let him put up stats. That's my thing. All right. One player I'm really low on. Joe Burrow. I like Joe Burrow as a talent. I think he's a really good NFL player. But a flaw was exposed last year, and he can't get the ball down the field. We saw a lot of empty targets to AJ Green, and I don't think that you're going to see a significant jump this next year coming back from a devastating knee injury and a not that good offensive line. I know they drafted a couple players and signed a couple people off of a free agency, but it wasn't impact offensive linemen. So I am concerned that Joe Burrow, while he does have the passing volume, he was not getting the touchdowns. And even the addition of Jamar Chase, who I do have projected in the top 20 of wide receivers, is not going to be enough for Joe Burrow. So I would say steer clear of Joe Burrow at his ADP of 9th, 10th, and 10th, respectively, sleeper fantasy data FFPC, quarterback overall. I think there's a lot of hesitancy about what he can do, at least to start the season.
Fair enough. I'm worried. I'm not that low on him. He's more of that, quarterback 2 range for me. Looks like yours is almost back in quarterback 2. I think once I finalize mine, he's going to be in that like 15 to 18 range.
Awesome. Any other honorable mentions in quarterback before we go off to running back here, Billy?
No, let's get to the players that everybody wants to hear about.
Okay. All right. Tell us about a running back, Billy, that you are very high on, you're drafting with confidence, and that our listeners should also draft with a lot of confidence.
He keeps falling to me in a lot of drafts. I think I own him already in almost 30% of the drafts that I have completed. I keep landing in like the back half of drafts here on FFPC, and like that 8 to like 10 range is where I keep landing. And this player keeps falling to me almost every single time. And that is Ezekiel Elliott. And consensus right now is sleeper ADP is 8, FFPC ADP is 7, and fantasy data ADP is 7. I have him only ranked a couple higher at the running back 5. I think it's arguable you can move him up, you can move him down depending upon whatever system or format that you're playing in. But in terms of full PPR and what we have here, that he's my running back 5 on the year. I think people are taking recent biases into effect when they look at Zeke Elliott and what he did down the stretch, and he didn't look good. I'm going to say that right now. He looked washed. He looked old. He looked slow. I don't think he cared. I think he was just running the ball because they were handing him the ball. He didn't have that fire in his eyes or that go get him attitude that we've seen with Ezekiel Elliott. And but let's look at the offensive line. Their offensive line was beat up. They were down to second string and third string O linemen on every single position. They had lost their quarterback. They had Andy Dalton at helm. Nothing was clicking. Like, they weren't doing anything right. And I just think Zeke didn't care. At that point, he gave up, and you could see it in his play. You could see it in his play style. He looked lazy on the field.
Fumbles. All the fumbles. He had career high in fumbles.
Yeah, so I think it was just a really bad year for the Dallas Cowboys. Rewind, though, and go to weeks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And Zeke Elliott was the number 1 and number 2 running back on a week-to-week basis. He was catching a lot of balls in the backfield. He was still running. He was getting a lot of touchdowns. He was running well. He was running hard. And that was because they had to respect the passing game. Dak Prescott was throwing for 500 yards in some of those games. And I just think that with everything coming back together, I think Zeke Elliott has a big year again.
Ezekiel Elliott. He's my ninth, so I am lower on him. I do think Tony Pollard plays a little bit more. I think that there's Zeke has things to prove, and I don't know if he has the talent to prove himself back to being that elite. I know that they've put in a lot of money. They've invested it was a 6-year, $90 million deal 2 years ago. But I think they could be looking at other options, giving Zeke a break here or there. He's had 300 plus carries in however many years in a row, or at least
3 out of 5.
That pace, right? So I'm concerned that the Cowboys are going to move a little bit away more from Zeke, and that he did show that he's more human now than he was a couple years ago. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. Billy gets Zeke. I do not get Zeke. Let's take a look at a player I'm very high on in the top 5. In fact, this player is sleeper ADP 9 for fantasy data, and then 11 for FFPC.
Biases.
Well, I mean, how many G's do you see behind me? 1, 2, 3. But let's take a step back. This particular player has finished as a top 5 running back for 2 straight years. Both times drafted outside of the top 5. A lot of hate, a lot of non-belief, a lot of, well, he's not going to get this, he's not going to get that. The narratives all talked him down, and he has done nothing but perform the last 2 years as the number 2 and number 5 running back overall. And that is Aaron Jones of the Green Bay Packers, baby. Let's go. He is my number 2 running back.
That is such a homer rank.
It is not. I did the projections, Billy. And believe me, it felt really good projecting him there. But
Bradley's sprinkling a touchdown over here, sprinkling a touchdown over there. Aaron Jones is now running back.
Okay, but he's done it before. He missed a game last year, and I guarantee it would have put him, if you put Jamal Williams' fantasy stats that he did when he was the starter for that one game, it would have put Aaron Jones as the top 2. He has been a top 2 running back overall over the last 2 years. So let's give some Aaron Jones respect here. I understand that there is concern about Aaron Rodgers. There seems to be a lot of positive trend. I know there was a lot of negativity around the draft. Things have really cooled lately about the Packers moving around some cap space and them making moves and bringing up warm bodies to keep their players and OTAs fresh. I think Aaron Jones is a really good pass catcher, and that's why he's going to be the number 2 running back for me. I'm going to get him everywhere. If I'm at the back end of the first round, I'm getting a top 2 running back, top 3 running back in the back end of the first round. So draft him with confidence. Note he's a very capable pass catcher, he's a breakaway runner. We see it. Free Aaron Jones, right? That's what Matthew Berry says all the time. Free Aaron Jones, but he's been free the last 2 years. So I think the drafters need to see him for what he is as a top 5 running back.
I don't hate it. I think it's a little high. I mean, putting him ahead of Dalvin Cook for me is just tough. Putting him ahead of even Alvin Kamara for me is tough. I have met 7. Last year I was low on him and I was wrong. But I think that I just think there's more concerns. Okay, Aaron Rodgers doesn't come back. Where are you moving Aaron Jones?
I think he goes down to, okay, so he's probably still a top 10 running back, but I think 9, 9, and 11, where our ADPs are, he's being drafted at his floor.
See, for me, I think I personally think he's being drafted above his floor. I think he's being drafted near his ceiling. And I think that he has had 2 top 5 finishes, but people are expecting him to take a step back with Aaron Rodgers potentially leaving. If Aaron Rodgers stays, okay,
which
great.
I have projected Aaron Rodgers to stay.
So Aaron Rodgers stays, great. The band's back together. I still think AJ Dillon's involved more than people want to admit this year. I don't think they would have let Jamal Williams walk had they not had confidence in Dillon here. So I could see AJ Dillon coming in, stealing some goal line work. I could see him coming in and being more of that short yardage back. I can give you the fact that I think Aaron Jones will pick up most of the passing work. AJ Dillon's not a chump in the passing game, but he's not as good as Aaron Jones. And he's not
Jamal Williams had 35 targets last year.
Yeah, it's a good amount of targets.
20 of those going back to Aaron Jones.
Yeah, if not 25 even. Like I could see he's going to see an uptick in the passing game.
And they paid him a lot of money. Like they're not going to pay him to not use him.
Yeah, so I think that I don't hate it. I don't really like it, but I do like the bold take. I'm kind of in the middle. I'm kind of undecided right now, Bradley. I'm trying to figure out if I like it or not.
See, he was my way too early running back too, and I was like, well, maybe I can, make some adjustments and I'll see what happens. And I did go through all of my projections with the rookies and the different things, the different players and all the dynamics, and I still am coming out to. You need to be drafting Aaron Jones if you need a running back one at the back end of the first round.
And I've been taking him, like, quite frankly, in FFPC. Someone either takes him in the end of round one, but if not, I've been hitting him on the way back at the beginning of round two as my second running back. And I'm really happy about that because I'm able to get somebody like Chubb or Zeke and pair him with Aaron Jones or Eckler and Aaron Jones.
Absolutely.
I love that
smash second round pick.
Yeah. And but we have kind of seen his ADP fall a little bit. Like I've seen him fall in some FFPC drafts to like middle of round two. Is kind of the latest I've really seen him go. But I think that I'm okay with it. I've decided.
What's a running back, Billy, that you are not okay with at their ADP? A player that you are avoiding at all costs in your drafts at running back.
It's not that I'm avoiding them. I just don't like where they're being drafted at. And for me, that's Jonathan Taylor. And so fantasy data is running back 6. Jonathan Taylor on Sleeper is running back number 6. And on FFPC is running back 5. He's my running back 9. And it's purely because I think that you have, Hines is going to be involved in the passing game. I think they're going to throw the ball a little bit more with Wentz in town, reunited with Frank Wright. I think they're going to try to establish the passing game. Yes, they have a good offensive line, but I just think that, people are taking him ahead of people like Nick Chubb, who's been, one of the best pure runners in the NFL. They're taking him ahead of Zeke Elliott. And I understand Elliott had a bad season last year. I've seen him go ahead of Barkley, ahead of Alvin Kamara in a lot of drafts. I've seen Jonathan Taylor go as the running back 2 through 4 pretty consistently. And for me, that's just a little rich for my blood. I like Derrick Henry more. I like Alvin Kamara more. I like Dalvin Cook more. And I'm seeing people take Jonathan Taylor ahead of those type of running backs. And I just can't do that. I'll gladly take him at like the end of round 1, but I'm not taking him as a top 3, 4, 5 pick.
I agree with you. He's a top 10 running back for me, but he's my running back 10. And you mentioned it, Billy. He's in a committee. Nyheim Hines, the passing game, you want to light it up. But he's in a committee not just with Hines, but they re-signed Marlon Mack. I know he had an Achilles injury, and Achilles really do affect running backs a little more in their dynamic play. But they signed Mack, and they still have Jordan Wilkins, I believe, still on the roster. So and we saw how Wilkins was. He was used at times last year to give Taylor breaths and to give Hines breaths. I think there's just enough. Like, these are good enough backups that they're just going to eat into a little bit more than what anyone wants. So I agree with you, Jonathan Taylor. He's an avoid for me as well.
There's also a piece that people really haven't been talking about, and it's Carson Wentz's involvement at the red zone. And Carson Wentz is not afraid to, leap over the offensive line or try to run it in himself. I mean, that's how he tore his ACL the year that he was the MVP front runner. And Phillip Rivers doesn't do that. Phillip Rivers hands the ball off because Phillip Rivers is old. So I think that people are underestimating.
Or dumps it off.
Yeah, or dumps it off. And I think so people are underestimating, what Carson Wentz is going to do in red zone packages as well. And for me, that's what I played into my rankings with Jonathan Taylor. So I'm not saying he's bad. I'm just saying he's going ahead of where I'm comfortable taking him.
Carson Wentz, I'm looking back at our quarterbacks here for a second. Carson Wentz, I'm totally out on. He's like quarterback ADP in 19, 18, 19. He's my quarterback 29.
Oh, get out of here. No way. Who's okay? So who are 3 names ahead of him?
Let me look. 28, I have Ryan Fitzpatrick. 27, Zach Wilson.
Okay.
26, where's 26? Sam Darnold. And 25, Justin Fields.
See, I have Wentz ranked above all of them.
No.
To each their own. To each their own.
Get me out of Wentz. Get me out of Wentz. You can gladly have him for a premium in some of the leagues that I got him in last year. Okay. One player I'm out on for this year. I'm avoiding at all costs Cam Akers.
That's a good one.
Matthew Stafford, during his time with the Lions, had, what was it, like a 6-year stretch where there wasn't a running back who had 100 yards until Kerryon Johnson finally did.
That's the Lions, though. That's a different team, different coaching system, different line.
Okay, so I'm adding to the narrative here because it's a new team, and I don't think the Rams were able to run what they wanted to run last year. Hence why they got rid of Goff. So they have Woods, they have Kupp, they have Higbee, they let Everett go. But Daryl Henderson has the same draft pedigree as Cam Akers, a 2nd-round pick, and Henderson was usable at the beginning of the year. Like all of this hype that Akers is a top 10, 11, and 8 ADP, like I can't get behind it after one game where he had 30 touches against a really vulnerable New England team. I'm not sold on it on one game. Now, he had a good running back profile when he was at Florida State. He ran behind one of the worst offensive lines and was meh behind that offensive line. But, I mean, he creates a lot of yards, but I also think that he's not involved in the passing game at all. He's my running back 30 overall, like 3-0. I don't want anything to do with Cam Akers at all.
I'm low on Cam Akers, but that's disrespectful low, I think. I understand. Okay, so I'm not a big Cam Akers fan. I think he should be going more in that like Joe Mixon, Clyde Edwards-Helaire range, that like 13 through 16 range for me. People are drafting Cam Akers at ceiling right now. They are expecting him to get the workload that he was saw down the stretch. People forget Jared Goff had a broken thumb. Daryl Henderson was hurt. Malcolm Brown was hurt. And
right, he was the only guy out there.
Cam Akers was averaging 22.5 carries a game. 22.5.
For how many games?
That was over a 4-game stretch.
Yeah, 4 games where Daryl Henderson was pretty much out. Goff, all of it. Everything had to be perfect for Cam Akers to be at absolute ceiling. And they played against, as I mentioned, the Patriots were really vulnerable in a primetime game. I'm not in on Cam Akers. Get me out of Cam Akers. I recently traded Cam Akers in a dynasty league for Calvin Ridley, and I feel like I won.
Dynasty, I like that trade. I mean, I think you could have got a little bit more just because all the hype.
Well, I got Harrison Bryant too, but
yeah,
a throw in.
It's a throw in. I think 30 is too low, but I'm and I haven't finished my projections, but he's going to land in that 13 through 16 range for me.
Okay, let's move to wide receivers, Billy. It's time.
All right.
What's a wide receiver you want our listeners to go after this offseason?
I want to take him, but he's also your guy, so I'm going to let you have him.
No. You take him, and I'll get another.
AJ Brown. And you and I loved AJ Brown last year. I still love me some AJ Brown. AJ Brown is in a Tennessee offense without Jonnu Smith, without my beloved Corey Davis. Yes, soft voice. And they really didn't address the position that much. I mean, they added Josh Reynolds. They added in the draft Des Fitzpatrick, right? And does it really matter, right? And then outside that, they haven't really added much to the position. So, I mean, I have AJ Brown projected for like 140, 150 targets. And I really think he's going to level up. I mean, he was a beast last year, yard after the catch monster, touchdown machine. If he's able to play it, and he did all that on, a knee injury. He said he wasn't right after week 1. And to be able to come back in and still complete all of that injured, I think he's going to have one hell of a year.
Well, he had not just one knee messed up, but both knees he had surgery on right after the season. The Tennessee doctors advised him to shut it down for the season after the first couple weeks, and he said no, and he put up that kind of season. So I agree with you. AJ Brown he's my wide receiver 2, and he seems to be your wide receiver 2. He's being drafted at 5, 7, and 4. There's always an AJ Brown lover in someone's league, so maybe they get him before you do. But there's a lot of opportunity there. I do have concerns that it's a different offensive coordinator, that they're not going to be as efficient as they were the last 2 years. Tennessee was arguably the most efficient offense in all the NFL the last 2 seasons, and that teams may double, triple AJ Brown because they don't respect any of the other pass catchers. I mean, Josh Reynolds couldn't even barely make the field for the Rams. So I wonder if there are, ways in which things can go sour, but I really love the upside.
Yeah, it's about the upside for me. It's about the target share that he's going to see. And I just think that when he's able to get the ball, he's able to do magnificent things.
So you said 140 targets?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I only have him at 132 or so, but
that's ballpark.
He's the type of wide receiver that can take 2 of them to the house in one game.
That's true.
So,
all right, who's one for you? Even though I stole yours too.
One player that I am very high on. Let me actually dig kind of deep here, and I'm gonna pull one out for our listeners here. Actually, you know what? I'll do you a favor, Billy. Debo Samuel.
Yes.
Debo Samuel. The ADP for is 37, 34, 35. I have Debo projected as my wide receiver 26. So pretty good value way back in the end. We saw the type of target share he was getting when he was healthy. The game plan for the 49ers was centered around Debo when he was healthy. Kittle was the number 2. They want to center the offense when Debo is healthy around his target share and get him involved. I know most of his catches were behind the line of scrimmage, but that's where he can make people miss, and he's a dynamic player. There are questions certainly about his health, which is why, maybe people are giving the discount at this point, but that's baked into his ADP right now. You want a player who has top wide receiver 2 upside, even hitting back end wide receiver 1 upside with that you're getting in wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 territory.
I love that you have him ranked 1 spot above Ayuk, because consensus here in most sites is he's going almost, 10 wide receivers ahead of Debo. 2 solid rounds in most drafts. And I think it should be reversed. I really do. And we've talked about this before. I mean, he had a good rookie season, but he doesn't have that rookie season if Debo plays all year. He doesn't have that rookie season if Kittle's there all year. I think he's being overdrafted. So we're just going to skip ahead. Sorry, Bradley, to a player I'm avoiding, and that's Brandon Ayuk, to tie it in with Debo Samuel here. And that's because of these reasons. I just think that Debo's good. He's really good. And they're going to there's going to be a lot of mouths to feed in this offense. And I think that Debo is going to be able to create yards after the catch. He's going to, make more fantasy points, essentially is what I'm going to try to say, with, even if there is limited opportunities, throughout all of the wide receivers, because it's going to be diverse. It's going to be, I think, split up evenly more. We're not going to be seeing, 13 target games, 12 target games for these receivers. I could really see people getting like 8 to 9, 7 to 8, a bunch of kind of like the ball being spread out in this offense.
Well, and it's Jimmy Garoppolo or Trey Lance for the majority of the season. Who do you think, Billy?
I think Jimmy G until he gets hurt, or until he, doesn't perform. And so I think that I think it's Jimmy G's job to lose in the beginning of the year. And I just think that Ayuk's being overdrafted for what he's doing.
Okay, one player I'm out on, and that's Mike Evans. We saw what happened when Antonio Brown was in. Antonio Brown, one of the highest hog rates among wide receivers, when he played for the Bucs. We saw what he did in the playoffs. We saw Mike Evans not get yardage at all. There were a couple games where he had, I don't know, less than 50 yards, but like 2 or 3 touchdowns. And sure, maybe that's the role that he's going to have, but are you going to be, depending on a wide receiver that's being drafted at 11, 13, and 15, respectively on Sleepers, Fantasy Days, and FFPC's ADP, you want him to be touchdown dependent? I'm not buying into Mike Evans being a touchdown dependent wide receiver. I think he'll still get his 1,000 yards for the 7th year in a row, but I think barely. And I think it's because the 17-game season with we saw Gronk find his groove. We saw Antonio Brown play very well. Chris Godwin was injured for part of the season, which contributed to an increased target share for Evans and Scotty Miller and all those other players. I think there's just enough talent to chip away at the yardage for Mike Evans, and I think there is going to be touchdown regression for Evans in that category as well. So he's my wide receiver 32. I don't like that, but he's an avoid for me.
I don't like it at all, Bradley, but that's another day, another topic, because I think that could turn into like a 15-minute debate. So I'm going to agree to disagree on this one, and we'll move to tight ends.
All right, last bit. Billy, tell us about a tight end that you are all in on.
TJ Hawkinson! Love him.
I think I heard you all the way from Detroit.
This started last year, and I acquired him in like 20 dynasty leagues, and it hasn't stopped. I knew this was going to happen. I told Bradley last year when he asked me, why are you acquiring TJ Hawkinson in every league? And I said, look at the wide receivers in the rosters. Look who they have. He's going to eat next year. He's going to be peppered with targets. We're going to see a Kittle/Kelsey target share. And that's what I have him projected for. I posted the projections. Let me pull them up here because this one hits home with me. I really, really love TJ Hawkinson this year. So pulling up the projections here, we have Detroit down here at the bottom. And TJ Hawkinson I have for... Oh, wow. We each have him the same amount of targets. That's crazy. 131
I think
targets.
Someone copied off of me.
No, because I have 22% target share. And you have 21% target share. I have more attempts for Jared Goff than you do.
You have Hawkinson at 2 more fantasy points.
I do. 216 versus 214.
Looks like I'm out on TJ Hawkinson.
But like in comparison, TJ Hawkinson on my projections is 216 fantasy points. The quote unquote wide receiver 1 and 2, Rashad Perriman and Tyrell Williams currently 154 and 153. So like that's putting in perspective how high I am on TJ Hawkinson. He is the wide receiver 1. I know he's tight end, folks, but I'm saying it now. He is the wide receiver 1, or I should say target number 1 in this offense. I have ranked ahead of my boy George Kittle. So in my projections this year, Kelsey, Waller, Hawkinson in that order.
I think someone's just copying my rankings because I have Kelsey, Waller, and Hawkinson as 1, 2, 3. For Mark Andrews, you're at 5, and we have Kittle and Andrews flip-flopped, but that's probably your 49ers bias there. Okay.
Slightly. Yes.
I like Hawkinson as well. I think that there's only a concern that Hawkinson drops the ball a little bit more than I'd like, but he's going to get peppered with targets. I have him projected for like 130. And if there's a safe target share, I mean, you have to be taking Hawkinson over Kyle Pitts, right? Even if Julio gets traded.
100% over Kyle Pitts. I refuse to own Pitts this year. Refuse.
Okay, because Sleeper's ADP is 4 for Kyle Pitts, and FFPC's ADP is 4 for Pitts. Hawkinson is 6 for Sleeper, 5 for FFPC. I don't mention fantasy days because Pitts is tight end 12. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll talk about it there, but I think that'll rise here and be updated shortly.
Yeah, I have Pitts as my 7th right now.
Yep.
And I think that's probably where he should be going right now. Like, behind the likes of Hawkinson, behind the likes of Andrews, behind the likes of Kittle. He's being drafted right now. Just, I think, absurd. Like, it's
behind
crazy.
The likes of Robert Tonyan. Am I right or am I right?
I have Robert Tonyan projected for, I think it was 4 more fantasy points over Kyle Pitts. I did my post. I got attacked. I don't care. I'll post it.
I think I will bump Pitts up a little bit more once we get clarity about
Julio Jones.
Clarity about Julio Jones. I will officially update, and I think I'll bump him above Tonyan, but it's in the same tier right now for me.
Yeah, I just think that we're going to see a lot of 12 personnel. I think we're going to see Hayden Hurst in the field a lot more than people are willing to admit right now.
Hey, and that was my talking point a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, we both talked about that. We've talked about we talked about Mike Davis here and his involvement in the in the passing game. He's also a passing down back. And I know you love Mike Davis as much as I do, Bradley, but I just think
I love Mike Davis as much as the public does, because my ADP, let's just, for the record, Mike Davis ADP for Sleeper is 28, 29 for fantasy data, 24 for FSPC. I'm at 28. I'm on average 1 spot below ADP. I do not hate Mike Davis. I think he is fine at his ADP.
That's fine. I think he'll outperform it, but I do not think that Kyle Pitts is going to outperform his ADP.
That is fair. One player that I'm very high on, and I'll throw out Anthony Fergusor. Y'all should already have listened to me talk up the Ferk Daddy and gone and gotten him. So I'm going to spend time talking about another tight end that you should be drafting with confidence, and that is Eric Ebron. Eric Ebron right now is going as the tight end 26, 20, and 26, and that is disrespect. Ebron has a huge target share in the Pittsburgh offense. We saw what he did last year. He was a top targeted tight end for Ben Roethlisberger. He was a safety outlet. We saw Ben not throw the ball far down the field. And I know they added Pat Freiermuth, but Vance McDonald retired. It takes a couple years for these rookie tight ends to develop. I think it's Ebron and only Ebron in the tight end position for our tight end. So if Ebron is sitting there at the tight end 20, 25, go after it.
Who's my number 1 most owned tight end in FFPC?
Eric Ebron.
So for those of you who are watching this screen here, you can see all my most owned players on my FFPC drafts. This is my tight end drafts here. So Eric Ebron, Noah Fant, Anthony Fergusor are the 3 most
daddy, baby.
Are the 3 most owned. Harrison Bryant as well. TJ Hawkinson only down here at 12.5% because he's been going in, round 3, round 4 in some scenarios. And I'm just not willing to spend that on many people, especially a tight end right now, when I can get my, 3rd running back or, a number 1 or 2 wide receiver. And this is with this many drafts. Like we talk about drafts, there's quite a few drafts in there. So when I have, Eric Ebron as, he's my 4th most owned player in drafts right now, behind the likes of T. Higgins, Debo Samuel, and Miles Sanders. So
absolutely. I think Ebron is an absolute steal. He's not washed. The only reason why he got bumped down a little bit was because of injury right at the end of the season. And he's a safety valve for Ben. I know he struggles with his drops, but he struggled with his drops when he was in Detroit. He struggled with his drops when he was with Indy. He's going to get targeted. He's a big body receiver, and he'll get tight end, and he'll get the touchdowns. So draft Ebron. Billy's doing it. I would do it. Please go after Ebron. Billy, tell us about a tight end you are out on.
Kyle Pitts.
All right. Now it's my turn. I'm going to talk about, we know. And I'm going to talk about two, and we'll end the show with these two, same team. Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith. Get away from those players. Cam Newton is not going to be able to sustain a target share that either of them are going to succeed on. They are both very talented, but there's just so many wide receivers there. They'll each be getting like 12% target share, 14% target share, 15%, and in a low volume offense that we saw Cam Newton throw. And he had one of the worst performing quarterback seasons last year. He threw like 3-4 total touchdowns and had like 8 interceptions, something ridiculous. Do not target Hunter Henry. Henry is going as the 13th, 8th, and 15th tight end at ADP. And we're looking at Jonnu Smith, 16, 13, and 16. No, stay away. I have them at 26 and 33, respectively. Stay away from these two. It will not be Gronk and Aaron Hernandez 2.0. Do not be drafted. Sell high on any person who wants. Get a second-round pick for these tight ends in your dynasty leagues.
The only thing I want to say, because I agree, I'm not drafting them in many places, except best ball, because I'll grab both of them. And I'll grab them on a turn. I'll go 1-2. Between the two of them, you're guaranteed a top 12 tight end.
I don't think so. I don't think either of them are top 12 for either week.
Beer bet time.
Okay. Will they have sprinkled throughout the season? Sure. I don't think either of them finish in the top, we're talking they're being drafted at 13, 15, 16.
No, I'm specifically saying if you, without having to pick either one of them, you'll get a tight end one out of either one of them almost every week throughout the season.
Almost every week. I don't know. I'm still out. I don't think either of them finish as at least a top 20 tight end this year.
Wow, that's bold.
Okay. Come at me, Twitter.
Almost as bold as Kyle Pitts is not gonna be doing what people think Kyle Pitts is gonna be doing.
I mean, even if Mac Jones steps in, Mac Jones is a pocket passer. I think things will change a little bit, but he's gonna be looking to prove himself and throw the ball down the field, and not to Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith as often. Like even if the passing volume increases, it's not going to be enough to get their season totals up to where you want them.
No, fair enough. And so we're going to have more of these ADP talks throughout the year. I think it's something we should maybe do once a month. We talk about different ADPs. That's something we'll bring up, but a couple things worth noting here. Next week, we're going to be joined by another Dynasty League. We're doing another Dynasty League review. It is a 1 versus 11. It's a very unique league. So that league, you face all 11 opponents every single week. And at the end of the year, we have a winner on who has the most points for the season. So Dynasty,
it's a 1 versus 11. So if you have the most points in your league, you are 11-0 that week, and it's a cumulative. So week 2, if you win, if you're the highest for the second week, you're 22-0. That's how, yeah. So at the end, that's how the record's going to work.
So it's a very unique league, Dynasty League review. Join us live next week as we break down this Dynasty League and we project the outcome and the winner. If you want us to rank and project your league, message us on Twitter. Get a hold of us through there. We can be more than happy to rank your league as well. And we'll see you all next week here. So thanks for joining us on our ADP talk, and we'll see you next week.